So I did a placement year, did 1 year with ISG, some of the best people in the industry there. It's a bad sign for ISG to go. It's an absolute whale of a company. Contractors are put under too much pressure in terms of risk profile.
The people at the bottom of the line are usually not as well equipped to deal with the situation as the people at the top. I just think it was the old school narrative of if you're leading a testosterone fueled construction site and if you're the leader, it's almost like animalistic. You've got to be ruthless.
As a managing director, I will be on site. I'll even do weekends with the guys. I'll be there in the trenches with them when they need me. I'm not someone who will sell a client a dream and then just sail off into the sunset.
There are a few companies out there who do that. There's a disparity between, because they're site managers, they're site based, and then you've got that disparity between the site based and the office based.
People sort of look down at site managers. People look down at you like you're some sort of second class citizen. One morning I literally woke up and it was like someone had flicked a switch to me overnight. Mental health hits people in different ways. Your construction worker is 4 times more likely to die by suicide than your average UK national worker.
Mike, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on your podcast.
It's been a long time coming, this one, mate.
Yeah, it has.
It's quite a long time ago I messaged you to come on.
Yeah.
So, mate, thanks so much for your time, first of all.
Pleasure.
I'm really looking forward to the episode. Loads of topics I want to dive into. But, as discussed before, I always like to, throw it back to the start of you, before you got into the construction industry and where you were at then.
Yeah, so grew up in Derbyshire, fairly rural-ish. Went to school there. Wasn't really exposed to any like big cities or anything like that. Just sort of lived a sort of a typical childhood, I guess. Nothing too exciting. Was quite into my sports. Was always quite into sort of making things and seeing how things went together. That sort of like lent me quite easily into getting into what I do now. Nothing too exciting. Yeah. Sports mad, never good enough at any of them to make it pro, unfortunately, which is what I always wanted to do. But
join the crew, mate. I was the same. I was always
could have made it.
The old injury classic.
I had a bad knee.
I was similar, mate. Sort of thing with the sports I did. I always wanted to be a pro, but I just was never good enough.
No. So that's why I now do construction. It was good. I loved Derbyshire. Growing up, I sort of got to a point when I was sort of like maybe 17 or 18 and I thought I just can't be in this place anymore, and I wanted to see other things. I always wanted to sort of do other things and see other things, and I think had I have not gone to university, I think I probably maybe would still be there. But going to university sort of gave me a bit more of a broader mindset and made me want to try something else, basically.
And was that uni in London you came to?
No, that was Nottingham.
Okay.
So I did sixth form still in Derbyshire. Didn't really know what I wanted to do with myself at that point, as so many people do. I then did my sister's friend works for Bowmer and Kirkland.
What's that?
Big company. They don't really do much in London, but they do quite a lot of supermarkets, big construction outfit, Midlands, North, all that sort of stuff. And my sister's friend worked there, and she was like, why don't you just go and do a day with him? So I went and did that and like absolutely loved it.
Was it harsh labouring?
Nah, it was like I was just like a work experience, of superseding drawings in the site office. You know what I mean? But just sort of like walking around like the site and seeing things happen and seeing the progress. That really sort of spoke to everything that I wanted to do in my career. I didn't want to be sat behind a desk 8 till 5. That was never going to be what I wanted to do, which ironically is probably what I do now. But it certainly wasn't going to be my sort of path into a career. So did that. Did a construction management degree at Nottingham Trent. Had an amazing time there. Not sure how much construction management learning I actually did, but got a lot of probably life experience.
Yeah,
and all
I was
that
going to
sort of stuff.
say, isn't that why everyone goes to uni?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it probably is just as important.
Definitely.
As getting a degree,
It should, to be fair, it's a fair point. It's almost like it should be kind of sold as that, as well as a life experience rather than just a degree.
100%. And you go there and just living away from, the safety net of your mum and dad or whatever, and cooking for yourself and live with your mates and having that experience. It is really good, and I probably, this sounds a bit rude to say, but I probably benefited more from that side of things than the actual degree.
Yeah.
I tend to think that the construction management degree that I was taught was probably a little bit a little bit in the past.
So how do they? I never went to uni, never did construction management. So what do they sort of teach you? Because construction management, obviously, you got I would consider on-site experience probably a little bit more beneficial than classroom experience.
100%. So they will basically teach you sort of the fundamentals of, say, contract. They'll teach you things like commercial management. Like we were looking at doing like cost plans on like handwritten paper. You know what I mean? And it's like no one has done that for years. I'll teach you a little bit about technical design, that sort of thing, and then like overall like project management, you know, different materials and things like that. But construction and construction management is so like vast, so they didn't teach anything about like fit out. They did a little bit about mechanical and electrical services, but pretty limited, and it just felt like the people who were teaching us weren't necessarily, they were fantastic and, you know, experts in their field, but the academic world is very, very different to the industry. And that literally my first day in my placement scheme, I literally realised that.
Did you? I always used to find that, sorry to interrupt, I always used to find it at school. So in sixth form I studied business studies, and I always used to find, I always used to think, after I left school, I used to think I was learning business studies from somebody who's never ran a business.
Precisely that. There's that old adage, isn't there, if you can't do teach, and I don't actually I don't agree with that. So no disrespect to any teachers or lecturers there, but I think I can see how that phrase is sort of like cottoned on, because the reality is if you are a current construction leader, for example, you're leading a construction firm, you're not teaching people, which I think is something that fundamentally construction should look to try and address and try and marry up industry and the world of education a lot more, because I think there's a real benefit to be had there. I think you see a lot of people coming out of university in construction who think that they're prepared and probably aren't, and I think that could be quite easily rectified. So
definitely. No, it's a fair point. So you went to uni, you studied your uni course, and then did you have site experience after that?
So I did a placement year. So I think they call it a sandwich course or whatever that is. So I did a placement year, did 1 year with ISG, which was a fantastic place to learn, some of the best people in the industry there. I did that year, stayed on for a little bit longer actually, and like worked through the summer as well, just because it had gone well. I absolutely loved it, loved the team, and then went back, finished uni, did my dissertation and all that, and then got a graduate job back at ISG, and it was obviously the news about ISG recently, a lot of people have sort of said to me, do you see that as an opportunity and all that sort of thing? And I'm like, do you know what? I struggle to see it as anything other than just really sad.
It's really sad, mate, especially people who've lost their jobs predominantly.
It almost doesn't feel right to sort of like give your opinion on things, because there's a lot of people that are probably still hurting. I think quite a few people have found work and all that sort of stuff, which is obviously really positive, but ISG was an institution, and there was no better place to learn. Some of the people that were there, really top level people, and it's a bad sign for the industry. It's for ISG to go, it's an absolute whale of a company. For them to go, I hope that this time people will actually learn from it and not just do the typical LinkedIn post and say how tragic it is, and then just go back to the practices that put ISG in that position.
And just to touch on that, obviously we won't speak anything of ISG as such, but those practices that ultimately led to that, like where do you sit with those practices? That
it's hard, because I don't know the ins and outs of what went wrong there, so I'm not in sort of a position to sort of
but as the industry, like as a whole,
is the industry in general, I think contractors are put under too much pressure in terms of risk profile. There's sort of a trickle down approach, heavily amended contracts, long payment terms, unrealistic timescales, and there's an attitude in construction of people just passing the buck down and transferring the risk. And I think if collectively clients, professional teams, contractors shared that risk a little bit more, it would certainly take a lot of the pressure off, and I think ultimately clients would get a better product and have a better journey with contractors. Heavily amended contracts mean that contractors have to then manage things in a certain way, and you end up in a bit of a bullfight, which is just not a nice situation to be in. It's something that, you know, at IKON we always try and avoid that, and sometimes, you know, if we feel like we're going to work with a client who's going to be that way, we will just pull out of a race because it's just not how we want to forge relationships. So I think it is a general, the industry's definitely got to learn from that. I
think sharing the buck and the responsibility is probably the primary one, because like you said, it gets filtered down all the way down the line, and then, you know, by the time it gets to the bottom of the line, the people at the bottom of the line are usually not as well equipped to deal with the situation as the people at the top.
Exactly,
so it's really unfair.
Exactly that, and I think, and it's the same, you know, and this isn't just me, you know, sitting here with my main contractor's hat on saying the client needs to take more. It's also main contractors need to have a think about passing risk to supply chain as well. And even things like everything gets passed down. So, you know, payment terms will get passed down. So if a client puts you on, you know, 60 days or whatever, you're probably then putting your supply chain on more than that, because that's, you know, that's how you need to manage your cash flow. So it puts down to the person, the one-man band who's, you know, a man in a van and he's got his tools and he's doing whatever. It puts them under enormous pressure. And, you know, you could be literally talking about, you know, food on the table and stuff like that. So
the majority of the time, actually, you're actually right. Majority of the time, sorry, it actually is food on the table situations.
100%. It's very real, and I think people need to try and take a bit, you know, note of that. Obviously, it's got to be sensible, but I feel like since I entered the industry 10 years ago, compared to now, I feel like lawyers are a lot more involved in construction than ever before, and perhaps they always were, and I just didn't see much of it because of sort of my position. But I think, lawyers are heavily involved now, and people are just sort of taking what lawyers say on face value instead of actually critiquing it and understanding, you know, what is the impact down the line on this.
So you mentioned that 10 years you've been in the construction industry. So tell us about that journey. So you finished university, and then you went to ISG, did you say?
Yeah, so I went to ISG, did a couple of years there, and then it was at ISG I was like technically a graduate. I was probably doing a bit of a more excessive role than that, if I'm honest. So that obviously came to a little bit of a head. I got offered a project as a role as a construction manager at Modus. Joined there, and leaving ISG was a really big decision for me. Obviously, as I said, like so many good people there, and I felt like my career trajectory was really good. But I felt like I was ready to be a construction manager, and, you know, a company as big as ISG, they've got they had certain rules and things like that in terms of, you know, when you've got to get off the grad scheme and stuff like that. So I went to Modus, did that. I think I was a construction manager for 1 or 2 years, became a PM, did that for maybe, 1 or 2 years as well, and then became a contracts director. So essentially running a division within Modus. And
you can't have been too old to be a contracts director at that point, were you?
Well, when was that? So I think, been at IKON for 3 years. So yeah, I would have been sort of 27.
Which, you know, is ultimately relatively, I mean, it's not young, and age nowadays means less, it makes less of an impact, I think. But then again, there is the old school thought process in construction specifically that, you know, if you've done your time, then the people who haven't done their time shouldn't necessarily be telling you what to do. There is an old school mindset.
Yeah, and I've struggled with that my entire career. Like even being a young construction manager, you know, you're walking around and telling guys that are double your age what to do, and that doesn't go down well. And look, I completely get that, and ultimately I learned that lesson along the way, that if you go in there with sort of a bullish attitude as a youngster, you're not going to get what you need. Someone who I worked with at ISG once told me, like, it's quite cynical, but he once told me the art of management is manipulating your resources to achieve your objectives, right?
Fair enough.
And I think there's actually a lot of truth in that, and ultimately it's about what's going to get them what I need out of that person. And going in there as a 21-year-old saying you're plastering the wall wrong or whatever ain't going to do it.
Ain't going to go down well.
Yeah, it's not going to go down well. So I've sort of learnt that along the way, and I think it's, you know, you try and be respectful and also understand that people are specialists in the field, and that's why that's why they're doing their job and you're doing yours. So asking them questions about, you know, how would you get around this particular fiddly detail or something like that.
That's a good point. So I had a different journey into the industry, but ultimately I was 20, I want to say maybe 25 when I was sort of contracts managing, and me telling the guys that were, we had some guys that were 60 who had been, they'd started as labourers, curb layers, bricklayers, petition fixers, carpenters, now ceiling fixers. They've done everything, so they know what they don't know is not even worth knowing. And then I came in and kind of like took a step back, and I thought probably a bit of advice that I received actually from someone senior in the industry said, like you said, the best thing to do is lean on them for advice rather than tell them what to do. So I used 100%. To like try and flip the mindset towards it and think like, I'll ask them how to do that rather than say that's how you should do it, even though I don't even know that's how you do it, rather than trying to demand authority. It's just pointless, not going to get you anywhere. Just ask them for advice, and they'll appreciate you a bit more and respect you more. And I think construction's come a long way in terms of a different way of doing things. When I entered the industry, the good sort of construction managers and site managers were probably quite aggressive. Quite, people used to say, it was old school and, they get things done, but quite aggressive, didn't really talk to people the right way. I think now you're seeing a lot more of a sort of progressive approach with that, which I think is ultimately a good thing. You don't want to be shouting and screaming at people isn't the right way to conduct yourself in any place, let alone a workplace. So, I think we're now seeing a sort of a different younger generation come through and take a bit of a soft's probably the wrong word, but a more collaborative approach with everyone and understanding that everyone's on this journey together. I just think it was the old school narrative of if you're leading a construction site full of predominantly men, there's more women nowadays that come into it, but 20-30 years ago it was predominantly men. If you're leading a testosterone fueled construction site, and if you're the leader, it's almost like animalistic, isn't it? It's like you've got to be ruthless. Like it's this narrative they've got painted, so everyone that came into the position, they thought, I've got to follow that narrative, otherwise I'm not going to be able to succeed at this role. There's a lot of sort of like macho men, and I think more women in construction has helped this a hell of a lot. There still needs to be a lot of improvements made in terms of more women coming into construction, but I think taking away that sort of horrible toxic masculinity sort of thing, I think it's a really important thing for construction. It's like I feel like sometimes I look at certain figures in the industry, I'm like, come on, like get into the 21st century now, like you can't be thinking that way. And but I think things are getting better. There's a lot of amazing people in this industry now, and a lot of people trying to do really good things. So it's onwards and upwards, I think. For sure, mate, for sure. So contracts director at 27. So tell us about your experience as the contracts director, and then ultimately where it led to after that. So that was basically running a team of project managers, and sort of heading up the delivery for that division, working alongside commercial director, that sort of role. So you'd be a bit more involved in pitching and winning work and fostering long-term client relationships, and that was something that I really enjoyed. It's a world that I didn't think I would enjoy, there's sort of a business development side, but it's one that I do more and more of now, and I do really enjoy it because I do naturally just like speaking to people and forming relationships and that sort of thing. So I did really enjoy that. It got to a point, and Modus was a really fantastic place to work. There's so many good people there. It was a real nice atmosphere. There's still a lot of really great people there as well. Couldn't say a bad word about that company. It just got to a point where you sort of maybe hit a bit of a glass ceiling, and IKON was sort of being spoken about, and just felt like a way that I could potentially maybe get to the next level of what I wanted to do in terms of potential routes into entrepreneurship and that sort of thing. So I think if that offer wasn't on the table, I still would be at Modus now. Sure. I wasn't ever unhappy there. And I actually have like friends who are maybe wanting to get into the industry and things like that, saying what do you think of, who should I go and work for? And I'm like, speak to Modus. I did used to say speak to ISG, because I've been very lucky in the fact that the two companies I've worked for prior to IKON are really great companies. They look after their people, they have good people, and that's it's really important. So obviously you don't have to go into the fine details, but what was the offer from IKON? Was it more of like a career progression that you saw? Exactly that. So it was then to join as operations director, which I did for a bit, and then became obviously managing director. which is a big leap from ops to managing director.
Yeah, a little bit. It's obviously we started 4 years ago, so it was still, and it still is in its infancy. And when you're sort of leading a startup, you have to wear a lot of different hats. So and sort of everyone mucks in with everything, to be honest. So it didn't feel like a massive leap. It wasn't like I was going from ops director of a £50 million company to then MD, which probably is quite a big leap. Yeah. It was just a
natural progression, was it?
Natural progression. It's where I sort of always saw myself. That's where I wanted to get to. And now it's just about growing IKON.
So where do IKON sort of sit in the market nowadays? Like, are they, are you obviously you guys operate, you do some great projects. Yeah. I actually, to be honest with you, funny enough, so when we were when we were starting to do some video case studies of stuff, Joe, who does our video case studies, I actually sent him a video who was coincidentally IKON's video case study that you did with one of your clients, and I said I want to start doing ones like that. Was it Alpha? I can't remember the name, but it was really interactive. You had the clients talking, and I was like, that's kind of where I want to be at with. So I pinched your idea, mate. Just a short break from the episode, which I really hope you guys are enjoying. This podcast has been invaluable for me, and I hope it's providing a lot of value for yourselves. If you could just do me one small favor and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform, not only does it help me and the podcast, but it also helps share stories and insights from the industry that we find ourselves in. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. But so you guys obviously carry out some really, really good projects. So where do you guys sit in the market at the moment?
So so we're basically a full design and build offering, but we do things a little bit differently. So what I obviously working at ISG and design and Modus and Jacob, who sort of is another of IKON's partners, but works primarily on the commercial side. He and myself both worked for traditional and design and build, and we sort of looked at that and realised that there's a lot of good things about trad contractors, and that sort of method. Their quality is really good. Their delivery is second to none. The process is really, really formidable. They sometimes, however, let themselves down in terms of like the journey with the client can be quite cumbersome. They can be quite contractual, not really care too much about the design and how it looks and that sort of thing. And on the flip side of that, you've got design and build companies who, fast, agile, very flexible, very user-friendly, but probably sometimes take a little bit of a cookie-cutter approach with design, sometimes let themselves down with delivery. It's you see a lot of design and build companies that are predominantly led by salespeople, which I think makes you run a company a certain way. So we saw a gap in the market to do something different, to try and bring those two worlds together, take the speed and flexibility of design and build, take the formidable quality, the delivery focused approach, blend those together to create sort of like a hybrid. So that's sort of where we sit. That's where we position ourselves. Going into a pitch, I'm not the best pitcher in the world, like far from it. I'm actually a terrible pitcher. But
at least you're honest.
but like I know how to deliver a project. That's what I've done. I and as a managing director, I will be on site. I will, I'll even do weekends with the guys. I'll be there in the trenches with them when they need me. I'll attend project meetings. I'm not someone who will sell a client a dream and then just sail off into the sunset.
There's quite a few of those out there as well.
So many of
nowadays,
those.
Without naming names, but there are a few companies out there who do that. So
and that's their model. And look, it's a great model, and there's so many very, very successful businesses who've done that, and fair play. But our biggest thing is to make sure that IKON's identity is authentic in how we believe things to be. So that may limit us. It may be a massive contributory, if that's a word, contributing factor to our success. We're yet to see, but it will be 100% us. It will be authentic to us, and it will be about what we believe in.
And you end up carrying out projects, and you'll do work with clients that you gravitate towards you guys, rather than working with clients' projects and things that you don't really want to, if you just honestly yourselves. And
I think that's really important. Like most of our work comes from repeat business. So and we've done, I won't name client names, but I could probably reel off 4 or 5 clients in 4 years that we've done 2 or 3 projects with. and that's all about how we run things. We don't see a project as a project. We see it as the start of a long-term relationship. And I would be devastated if we did a project for someone and then 10 years, 15 years time they needed a new office refurb. If they didn't pick up the phone to me, I'd be absolutely gutted. Because that's everything that we want to be. So that is important, and I think it's also important, especially as a company in its infancy, to make sure that you're picking the right partners from a client perspective. We did probably kiss a few frogs in that regard and work with people that weren't maybe morally aligned with us. Which you do. You make mistakes along the way. We've made plenty, but you learn from them. And I think now we're in a position where we've got a really good client base. We've built a trusted brand. People know what they're getting when they see our brand, and we just need to continue to work on that basically, and not lose touch of what we believe in at its core. Yeah, sure. You mentioned a little bit a minute ago about the formidable process of the trad side of things. So let's explore that in a little bit more detail. So what does the process look like for you guys, and where do you think it should be? It's difficult to sort of pinpoint it down, but I think ultimately it's having the correct resource on a project. So, a good example is maybe in design and build, a quite typical model is that project managers will do commercials and they'll do the delivery on site. And that, I think, is just not a great thing to do. I think then you sort of foster people who are a bit more of like a jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing. Being a commercial manager and being a project manager are two different roles. Completely different roles. So one thing that we do is make sure that every project has a project manager and a commercial manager, even no matter how small it is. So that could be one, things like technical services managers, stuff like that. Having the right level of resource on a project is really important. I'm not saying every project needs, a TSM and, a design manager and all that sort of stuff, but I think it's just recognizing that that's not an area to skimp on. I think it's a lot of it also is down to where a company puts its priorities. Is a company putting its priorities on the sell and pure numbers from a revenue perspective, or is a company putting its priorities into organic growth, reputation, doing things the right way? There's not a right or a wrong answer. We just see things that we want to do things more organically, reputation based, and just build from there. How about like the site side of things as well? So you guys obviously sound like you operate really well on the office side of things. So how about the site side of things? How do you guys operate, and also where do you think sometimes we might go wrong as an industry on site? I think site management's an interesting one because I don't think the site management model has changed for years and years and years, and it's never really evolved. I think one thing that I think the industry would be better off doing is a lot of site managers you see across the industry are freelance. And I get why, because they're a site resource, and if they're in between projects, you've got an overhead to manage. I get it. I think your site managers and construction managers are such an integral part of any construction company, right? Why do we treat them as freelance resource that we can nitpick? Because they should be like fully endorsing your company's values, what you believe in, what's important to you. They should be an integral part of that company. I think bringing more construction managers on the cards in on the books is something that's really important. It's important with training and career progression as well. So it's something that we've tried to do quite a lot of. We obviously still use freelance resource. But I think as an industry, that's definitely something that could improve. Yeah, it's almost like there's a disparity because they're site managers, they're site-based, and then you've got that disparity between the site-based and the office-based. There's the line in the sand for some reason that just seems like it's we're different to you guys. There's a little bit of people sort of look down at site managers quite a lot, or if you're based on site, it's like people look down at you like you're some sort of second-class citizen. Yeah, it's true. I used to find it really, really frustrating as a young construction manager. I'd be sort of looking at dealing with various project managers and things like that, and they'd be sort of talking to you in a certain way, and it's just the complete wrong way of how you should conduct yourself. So I think bringing site managers more into the fold in terms of what your company wants to achieve is super important. I think putting a bit less pressure on them sometimes and investing more in terms of training. I've seen a lot of young construction managers come into the industry and realise after a month that this isn't for them, and I think that's such a massive shame, because we're losing that talent to another industry.
I did an episode with a chap who runs a recruitment agency in our industry, with Will. And we had an in-depth discussion about the younger personnel coming in the industry, and that was a topic of conversation, that they're coming into the industry, but they're coming into like an old school industry that like the modern younger person is never going to succeed in, because it's still built on the reputation of the archaic reputation that it is.
You can imagine if you're a young person coming into the industry and you're seeing people working long weekends, long hours. It's hard. Being a construction manager is tough, and it can be quite thankless as well. You get told when things are going badly. You get told what you've done wrong. It's pretty rare that people will give you a pat on the back when everything's going smoothly, because that's ultimately a project going smoothly is what should be happening, because that's what the client's buying. But there are ups and downs, and being a construction manager is tough. Being a young construction manager is even tougher.
Definitely.
It's a it could be a rough industry at times, and some people love it and get on with it. Some people don't. But I think we need to wise up on this, because we're losing so many good people to other industries just because we've not brought them in at the right way. We've not invested in coaching them enough. That's something that's really important and needs to change. And
also another thing that we discussed, not in so much depth with Will, was like the mindset things as well. When you're younger coming in the industry, it's very difficult to get on from a mental perspective, because you're coming into an industry where ultimately there's a load of like testosterone fueled men who are like piling pressure on you. You shouldn't be telling me what to do. You should be doing this. Like, what are you doing? Like, you get put to the bottom of the pecking order. So like mentally, it's very difficult for them to get on with.
It has its impact on people. Like, I read a statistic the other day where your construction worker is 4 times more likely to die by suicide than your average UK national worker, which that is just staggering.
Even that, and like the fact that you've said that as a fact and there isn't awareness to that, is ridiculous.
It's heartbreaking, to be honest, and I've seen it. And first of all, I'm no angel with this, and I'm sure that I've put people under too much pressure before. So it's not. This isn't a case of me saying everyone needs to improve and I'm brilliant. Absolutely not. But I think the industry, mental health gets talked about quite a lot at the minute, and it's become a little bit of a buzzword, especially in construction. The stats are horrific, but I think people look at mental health almost like a bit of a box ticking exercise sometimes. So they'll stick on the wall, we've got 3 mental health first aiders. But you shouldn't need mental health first aiders. Why can't we actually flip this on its head a little bit and look at, okay, we're as an industry, we're looking at how we prevent people from going to a really dark place and doing very, very silly things. Instead, we and we're looking at people when they're already at that point, how we look after them in terms of preventative measures and stuff like that. I feel like we need to go even further to say, okay, well, what's taking that person to this point? Is it the payment terms? Is it the pressures? Is it that projects are under-resourced, so they're under so much stress? That's what we need to tackle, not mental health first aiders. Like, let's make sure that they don't get to that place first. It's
almost like it sounds silly, but it's almost like actually trying to solve the problem before it has to get to the
exactly
the
that
solution.
Exactly that. Like, and so, look, there's so many charities and people who do amazing things in terms of mental health and and preventing people from, as I say, doing things that are very silly and final. But I think we need to look at things again, take it a step back and say, well, hang on a minute, why are people getting to this point? Like, that's what we need to action.
Do you think there's a problem with, because just to pick up on something you said a minute ago, where you said you might have put people under a bit of pressure, too much pressure before, probably unbeknown, like speaking to you for the last 45 minutes, I can't see you trying to pile pressure on someone and like squeeze them. But do you think the issue is being able to, or the narrative about being able to speak out about depression, speak about the problems that they're under? Because I'm similar to that degree, where sometimes I might have put someone under a bit too much pressure, but maybe it's because they don't feel like they can say, I'm under too much pressure, I'm struggling a little bit here, please don't pile anything more on me. As an industry, it's very difficult. For some reason, the narrative has been built that it's difficult to speak out about the pressures they're under. And
I think there definitely is that, but I think the industry's getting a lot better at that. Obviously, as I said before, it's quite a macho industry, and I think that is quite a big problem in terms of people speaking out about mental health.
Yeah,
I do think that if I was sort of someone to say, well, they should be able to speak to me about things, I think that's also a little bit of a cop out, in fact, from my side, because we also need to be on the lookout for them, and we need to be looking out for each other more. And I think as construction leaders, we should be doing a lot more to tackle the root causes, and making sure that people aren't going to that place in the first place.
Yeah, because it's it's becoming more and more apparent, and I think you've pretty much hit the nail on the head where you've said it's it's tick a box exercise.
Yeah,
like look at our site, we've got a poster up, that means that we're sorting it out.
It's exactly. And then they're forcing everybody to work weekends and lates and all that. And look, as I said, I'm certainly not whiter than white in that regard. We can all definitely do better. But I do, I feel like we need to sort of take a step back, put our foot on the ball a little bit, and just think of this as an actual problem and try and solve the root cause of it, rather than sticking some posters up and training people at how to deal with someone who's not in a good way. Yeah,
and hopefully at some point in the near future, it can. You mentioned earlier it has changed quite a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe because I don't know this, and I don't know any stats on it, but the younger personnel coming through, I think they're a little bit more empathetic coming onto a building site.
100%, yeah.
So they can they actually appreciate other people's difficulties and feelings and emotions. So they take that into consideration before they're piling pressures and whatnot on them.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that with I see it so often in like daily life when you're if you're buying something, or if you I don't know, if you're working with like lawyers or something, or estate agents or whoever, if they deliver something a little bit late, they just go, yeah, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
If you're a builder and you deliver something late, it's like damages, blah blah, you know what I mean, like slaps down. And I think that puts so much pressure on people. And where like I said earlier, there is food on the table at risk. And I think that sort of aggressive contractual nature needs to change a little bit. People need to be more collaborative. People need to share risk more. People need to look out for each other more. Yeah. And there's a genuine benefit to everybody if we do that.
Yeah.
That's not just me saying I want an easier life. It actually will benefit clients and end users.
And the industry as a whole.
100%.
Because if we fix certain things up that need fixing up in the industry becomes a better place to work. Yep. Therefore, people want to do the work.
Yep.
If they want to do the work, they're delivering better projects.
Yep.
Clients, we can exceed clients' expectations more often.
Yep.
So the domino knock-on effect it really is there. But like you nailed it when you said we got to get back to the root problem.
Yeah.
Which by no means do I know what that is. But
no,
I hope I don't come across like I know what I'm talking about. But.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like having a bit of a pub chat here.
But it's nice to talk about it, and it's nice to bring a bit of awareness. And it's nice that I'm trying to create a platform whereby things like this can be shared and brought to awareness.
Yeah. No, I'd like to personally do more on it. It's something that I'm quite passionate about. It's something that I've had issues with myself in the past, and I know how quickly things can turn from thinking quite rationally and thinking very, very unrationally, and it can happen to everyone. Like anyone, you can think, everybody thinks it will never happen to you, and then it does, and you're like, wow. You change into a complete different person. And I just think that now it's important that if you are someone who's come out the other side of something difficult, to try and use your experiences to help other people. Like construction it's such a good industry with so many like amazing people in it, from the guys on site to CEOs. There's some top people in this industry. I love being on site and sort of that site banter and chat with everyone. It's fantastic. But it's like one of the only industries I know where like working weekends is like a given. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone
obviously you're working the weekend.
Exactly. and it's like why are we doing that? It's because people put themselves under too much pressure. Main contractors put themselves under too much pressure. Clients put too much pressure on main contractors sometimes, and then as I said before, it's that trickle down approach, and you end up burning yourself or your staff out, and it's just the complete wrong way of doing things.
You mentioned a minute ago that it's something that you might have suffered with. Are you able to share that in detail?
I literally so it was during COVID, which was obviously quite a difficult time for a lot of people, working from home, which does not do me good at all.
Sure.
I can't stand working from home. And yeah, it was a stressful testing time for a lot of people. There's a lot of uncertainty of the world at the minute, a lot of instability. And one morning I literally woke up and was not. It was like someone had flicked a switch to me overnight.
Was it like an out of body experience?
Yeah, sort of. I can't really describe it, and it's completely irrational to anyone who's never experienced anything like it before. But it just happened overnight. And I can remember being in the office and literally like ringing my dad in hysterics, thinking like, everyone's looking at me, everyone knows I've gone mad.
Yeah.
They're going to come and take me away. Like completely lost it.
Yeah. Was that pressures, do you think, through the industry, work?
I think it was just everything, to be honest. It was just, at that time was just a really tough time.
It was for everybody as well. That was
exactly that. And a lot of people suffered a lot more than I did, you know what I mean? But that was my own sort of personal experience. It was tough. And
then how did you manage to sort of flip that?
Well, mental health's like any sort of health, right? If you've got a bad knee, you don't just let it fester. Yeah. You go to a doctor and you get it sorted. It's exactly the same with your mind. And I spoke to my best friend at the time, and sort of I obviously wasn't in a great place, and I basically went and saw a therapist.
Yeah,
and they sorted it out. I had an issue. The issue got sorted. It doesn't, it's not a prolonged thing. And now coming out the other way, I can sort of digest it a little bit better and see how it happened. And if there's now any moments where things might be getting on top a little bit more, I can then manage that. And that's sort of what I'm alluding to now. I think having had that experience, I'd like to try and help others to make sure that they don't have that experience, because it is, it's frightening, it's scary for not just you, your friends, your family.
Yeah.
Mental health hits people in different ways, and I'm certainly no expert. I can only speak about my own experiences, but hopefully in doing that, if it helps one person, then great. Do you know what I mean? So that was my little sob story.
Yeah, no, it's mate. I'm happy you shared it, to be fair, because
I wasn't planning on doing that.
But no, I'm thank you for sharing that.
No,
and it's sad to hear that you had to go through all of that, and it was a tough time for everybody anyway, COVID. So I'm sure there was, like a lot of people probably suffered, and it's glad to hear that you seeked help, because a lot of people probably wouldn't go and seek the help that probably needed.
Yeah, it's so important. If you, like I say, it's like anything. If you let any wounds fester, it only gets worse. And even if you're not at that point, but things are getting a bit tough, like go and speak to somebody about it, because it does like 100% help. And I like to think that anyone in our team now feels like they can come and speak to me if they're going through a bit of a tough time, even if it's completely outside of work. I think business leaders in any industry should try and help their employees' health and well-being. And the mental health's a big part of that. So,
and also obviously because you've been through what you've been through as well, it does position you well to be able to give advice as well, because there's people who probably try and give advice on it, but because they haven't actually experienced it, it's probably you have a deeper understanding.
I to an extent, but by the same token, I'm not a therapist, so
no, sure.
I'm not qualified to give some advice, but what I can do is point you in the right direction of someone who is,
and also share your experience as well, because sharing an experience like that is invaluable for people who want to hear somebody else's experience, so they can not learn from it, but like help them through it.
No, definitely.
How about so IKON as a whole, and yourself, Mike, because you've had a short-ish career in the industry, but you've grown to like a senior level at MD at IKON. So like, what's the plans for not only yourself but IKON going forward?
IKON just needs to continue to grow. We've got quite big plans. We've got quite aggressive plans in terms of what we want to do financially. So we're working on trying to double our revenue year on year, which we get pretty close to every year, which is good. And it just needs to continue doing what it's doing, growing in the right way, getting good people, growing organically, and continue to have a reputation of a trusted partner. That's what we want to do. And in terms of me, I just want to keep doing what I'm doing, really. I quite like the fact that this has now opened a door into more sort of entrepreneurship sort of stuff, and that's something that I'm particularly keen to explore further. But who knows what the future holds, sort of thing. I'm more just focused on
the here and now.
The here and now. Yeah, let's just get through today. And just keep trying to build IKON. I think the last few weeks has been really, really busy for us.
Yeah.
And I think we're all sort of looking forward to getting to Christmas and taking a bit of a breath and reflecting, and then going again in January. So yeah.
How does it look, not necessarily just for IKON, but as an industry going into the next couple of years, because there's a lot of like rumours being spread around that as an industry we're going a bit quiet because things are like economically it's difficult for just your everyday living person, so people aren't really spending the money. So how are you situated for the new year, you guys?
At the minute, like next year's looking really strong. We're already securing a fair amount of work for next year, which is obviously really important for us. And we're seeing a lot of opportunities for next year, to be honest. So I'm not someone who always says everything is really, really positive when it isn't. I sometimes will say that things aren't looking great, but things next year looks good. But so I think now we're sort of seeing people, now the industry's starting to settle back into its normal rhythm again. London office has always been a strong market, even in like recessions, people are moving out of office, so there's more Cat A work and that sort of stuff. I think the profile of projects that we're looking at since COVID has drastically changed.
When you say the profile's changed, is that more Cat A stuff or?
So the Cat A landlord developer, Cat A plus, landlord fitted space. That's a market that's really taken off, and I can see why. But also, we're used to get a company say that would go in and take 60,000 square foot. And base it. Everyone's based in the office full time. Obviously, people are still spending the money, but we're spending it in different areas. So there's more investment going into, social areas, collaborative spaces, phone booths, different types of work areas. Which is a massive change. And I think now workplace design is sort of really now getting to grips with agile working and what the office can offer, and how offices need to be improved to make people, be at a disadvantage if they want to work from home. And I genuinely believe that's the case. I think there's no shortage of companies who foster you're in the office 4 or 5 days a week spirit and who do well. That's no coincidence. So many good companies I know that are just going like that. They foster working from home mentality, and that's something that I just like 100% get behind.
I agree with you, specifically for our industry as well, because we are predominantly a collaborative industry. So as we're trying to procure and deliver projects, we need to be working as a team.
Exactly.
Like we can't be zooming and teamsing and losing emotion in conversations. And I'm sure it's the same with other industries, but I can only speak from our industry. We all work from the office, and I'm a strong advocate of working from the office. There probably is a place for people who can work from home, like remote working. Like if you're freelancing people in alternative countries, then obviously. But I'm a believer in returning to the office, to be honest with you.
I agree, and I think people who say, I can't focus in the office and I focus better at home, that to me means that the office is the problem. Like you need to get a better office then.
Interesting perspective.
Do you know what I mean? So if someone says to me, I've got this assignment, I really need to focus on it, I need like 4 hours of silence. Okay, well, you should be working in a focus area of your office. If people genuinely think that working from home is a better environment for them, then their working environment in the office isn't up to standard. And I luckily know a good company who can help that.
So do I, by the way.
Little sort of drop. But so I think it's so important for culture. People think that their job is just like their primary output of their job. Your job is so much more than that. It's helping other people, it's training other people, it's contributing to the company culture. People forget that, and it's really, really important.
I agree with you in terms of the office side of things. Look, Mike, I just want to thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
First, I want to thank you for sharing your experience, by the way, because hopefully somebody or out there who may be struggling can hear that, and it might help them in some way, shape or form. And thanks for sharing your opinions on the industry. And you seem like you come across really, really well, and I can already tell.
I hope I didn't come across like an idiot. I was so worried about that.
Not at all, mate. But thanks for coming on again. I know I've said it before, but you come across really, really well, and I can tell tell that you're obviously very well situated in terms of the business development thing, because you kind of have an aura of just energy where you get on with people. So
I want to be walking out of here feeling 10 feet tall now. Yeah.
I'm hyping you up for that pitch.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Yeah. No, thank you very much for having me. It's been good fun.
No worries at all. Thanks so much, Mike.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.